Hi everyone, welcome to Bonnie Caroline Makes Cards. It seems I never have enough birthday cards on hand, so when I spotted this set by Simon Says Stamp Birthday Borders, I thought perfect and snapped it up. For today's video, I have 6 gender-friendly cards. When working on multiple cards, I like to work in pairs using the positive and negative technique. For this first card, I mask off an area on the card with Post-it tape. I place the stamps on my card to make sure that I get the right width. The masked area is ink blended using Distress Oxide inks, Abandoned Coral, Dried Marigold, and Scattered Straw. I'm working on Bristol Smooth cardstock. The Birthday Border stamp set has 2 sets of candles. One is a solid and the other is an outline. For this card, I am stamping both the solid candles and their coordinating flames with black VersaFine ink, creating a silhouette. The cute birthday sentiment is stamped below the ink blended area. Everything is stamped twice to produce a solid black finish, one of the many benefits of a stamping tool. For the counterpart to this card, I line it up with the first card. I mask off the area that was ink blended in the first card. Using the same Distress Oxide inks, I begin my blending at the top of the card with Scattered Straw and a little bit of Dried Marigold. I continue the blend in the bottom portion of the card with Dried Marigold and Abandoned Coral. I use the solid candle stamp to try to replicate the blended ink background. All the candles were stamped with Scattered Straw. Using just the corner of the ink pad, I was able to ink up the middle candles with Dried Marigold and then finally the last few candles with Abandoned Coral. The flames were stamped with Scattered Straw. I then inked up the bottom of the flames with Abandoned Coral and stamped that. The secondary sentiment, put another candle on your birthday cake because you're another year old today, was stamped underneath the candles. This was followed up by the main sentiment, Happy Birthday. Both were stamped with VersaFine ink. Both of these panels have been die cut with MFT stitched rectangle. They were mounted on black cardstock just shy of an A2 size card. This created a thin white frame when mounted on the card base. Both of these cards were embellished with Nouveau Crystal Drops, English Mustard, and Ripened Pumpkin. To add a little bit of sparkle to the card, the flames were topped off with Nouveau Glitter Drops, White Blizzard. My second pair of cards are a 2-for-1 deal. I inked up one panel horizontally of Bristol Smooth cardstock with pine needles, ice spruce, and old paper. This panel was then die cut with Simon Says Stamp's A2 thin frames using the largest die. Both frames were inked with Versamark ink and embossed with Wow Metallic Silver embossing powder. For the card with the central white panel, I embossed the outline candle image with the same silver embossing powder that was used on the thin frame. The candles and the flames are all one stamp for this one. The fun sentiment, I'm not making any age-related jokes because I really feel bad about your age, was stamped in black VersaFine ink. The 3 inks used in the background were stamped on my media mat and a little bit of water applied to each. The colors of the candles were alternated between pine needles, ice spruce, and old paper. The flames of the candles were painted with old paper. To assemble this card, I began by tacking down the thin frame to the outer panel. This is attached to black cardstock that is slightly smaller than an A2 size with white glue. As the glue is applied, I ensure that I am also catching bits and pieces of that thin frame. The central white panel is attached to white sheet foam. After the main panel is attached to an A2 size card base, the raised central panel is adhered. Before putting the finishing touches on the first card, I stamp the solid candle image on the blended ink background of the central panel of the second card. Once again, the candles are embossed with silver embossing powder. I emboss this image twice. Because the candles are solid, I want to ensure that the embossing is nice and smooth and has a slightly raised effect. This stamp set has lots of fun sentiments. For this card, I chose "Your birthday is becoming a serious fire hazard," and it is stamped with black VersaFine ink. I assembled this card in exactly the same way as its counterpart. Both cards were finished up with sequin embellishments. The sequins were topped up with Nouveau Crystal Drops Morning Dew. The drops dry clear, producing a beautiful effect. To add a little bit of sparkle to the card with the painted candles, I finished the flames up with Nouveau Glitter Drops White Blizzard. Again, the White Blizzard dries clear. My final pair of cards is also 2 for 1. As with the other cards, the blend was created on Bristol Smooth cardstock. A soft rainbow was created using spiced marmalade, scattered straw, bundled sage, tumbled glass, and shaded lilac. I used the second largest die from a nesting die set by Simon Says Stamp called Balloons to die cut the panel. An additional balloon was die cut with white cardstock. I used an embossing folder by Sizzix to emboss both balloons. The sentiments were laid out on both cards just to ensure that everything would fit before starting to assemble the cards. I had also die cut 2 balloons from white sheet foam. Each of the 2 balloons were adhered to these. A bow was tied onto each balloon before attaching them to the card. The balloons were attached to an A2 card base. I began by stamping the main sentiment on the card with the white background. I wanted to create the same rainbow effect that was on the balloon. I inked a few letters at a time with each of the 5 colors. I stamped after the addition of each color. I used just the corner of my ink pad to do the inking. The mini cube ink pads would be perfect for this technique. The secondary sentiment, "You don't look a day over whatever age you were a few years ago," was stamped with black VersaFine ink. I lined everything up so that I would have room at the end of the sentiment to use one of the single candle stamps. And then I stamped. Upside down. The sentiment was upside down. I took a deep breath and then stamped that sentiment twice on white cardstock to use for both of the cards. The sentiment strips and some white sheet foam were die cut with Simon Says Stamp's sentiment labels. I use this die set often and consider it one of my staples in the craft room. Because the balloon had been foam mounted, the sentiment strip did not look out of place when it was attached to the card. Next, I stamped the single candles. The outline candle was stamped with black VersaFine ink. The solid candle was stamped using all 5 of the colors used in the rainbow background. I don't often buy die sets that go with the stamps, but I did for this one because it was inexpensive. No fussy cutting today. I was able to quickly mount the candle on white sheet foam and add it to my card. I then spent a little bit of time positioning the string and tacking it down here and there with a little touch of glue. The counterpart for this card was assembled in exactly the same way with one exception. The sentiment for this card was embossed with white embossing powder. Because the balloon was attached to white sheet foam, I made sure to complete the embossing before the balloon was attached to the card base. If I had not, the balloon would for sure have been damaged. I added a little bit of double-sided tape so that my cards would lie flat while I do the embellishments. The card with the white background was embellished with a softly colored rainbow confetti mix. As I often do, the confetti was topped up with Nouveau Crystal Drops Morning Dew. The card with the rainbow background was finished up with white Nouveau Drops. Simon Says Stamps Birthday Borders is a very versatile stamp set. I like that I can make cards for both genders at any age. The sentiments are fun, and there are a couple of snarky ones for that special someone. And that wraps up this video. Thank you so much for your visit.